All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fearcast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD, anxiety and anxiety spectrum disorders, and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss, and I'm a licensed therapist specializing in OCD and anxiety disorders. Thank you all so much for joining me for today's episode. I'm gonna take a risk and try to answer two questions again today. For those of you who are new, this is a question and answer based podcast. If you have questions about OCD and anxiety and all that stuff, you can message me over at fearcastpodcast.com. You can send an audio question, which goes to the tippity top of the list, which I'm going to be answering one today. You can send me a regular old email type message by clicking on the submit a question link on the website and fill in your questions there. You can send me a message or a question over at Instagram. I'm Fearcast Podcast over there, and send me an audio question there, or just email it to me at questions@fearcastpodcast.com. There's so many ways to get a question in. So I've got a couple in the backlog. I've got a twofer from somebody coming. So they sent in one, which is great, and they sent in another one, which is also great, and they are separate. And I don't want to necessarily encourage everyone to send 50 different questions, but sometimes they warrant it. They're good questions, so I want to have that available. There are a couple of questions that I haven't gotten to yet. I promise they're audio questions. I'm getting to them. I'm lining up some experts. I'm getting a psychiatrist on, and I'm getting on a child development expert on to talk about these things. So they will be they're in the works, y'all. They're in the works. So let's see here. I also want to give a quick shout out to Rafi. R-A-F-I. I forget, Rafi or Rafi, whichever one, for sending in not a question, but just some advice and guidance and some encouragement. I routinely complain. Let me rephrase it. I routinely complain. And I routinely complain about my back being just bad. I have a Foss back, and it's kind of what we do. Ravi made some suggestions about different podcasts and other resources about chronic pain and different ways to manage that. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you sending that out. And a lot of that is great. And I haven't really looked into that. I do know some people who do have chronic pain, and doing some of that kind of pain reprocessing can be really helpful for folks. I haven't tried it myself. I ought to give it a go. What's been really helpful for me is I'm exercising more. I'm trying to go to the gym like 3 times a week, and I'm doing like lifting and that sort of stuff. And that's been pretty stinking helpful. I'm also minding my posture and trying to make sure that I sit up right. The couch that I have at home like automatically puts me into this position where I'm like slumped over, and it hurts even do that. Where like my back goes concave. It goes the direction that it ought not to, and it just kind of throws things out. I think the idea is I have a bulging disc in one of my vertebrae, and it sucks. By the way, the back is disgusting. Like there's this like the bulging disc. The chiropractor or the physical therapist describes it like there's this like jelly in between all your vertebrae that kind of keeps them together and keeps the nerves together. And then if they like, it can just kind of like the bulging disc, it just like comes out, and then it's painful. So you have to like squish it back in, and that's where some of those exercises come in, where it squishes the jelly back in. I'm positive there is a more scientific and medical way to say that, but that's the way that I'm saying it today. So that's how backs work. So you've heard it here first, perhaps. But anyways, but oh man, it's all right. Why don't we just get into the questions? I'll save y'all from my complaining about the conference submissions that I'm going to do. I'm going to write a couple. It's just, man, it's stressful. But you know what? Here's the thing. All right. I don't know why I'm talking myself into this. It's one of those things where you have to do it, and then the anxiety will pass. It will likely pass. It will help. But the delay, the procrastination, the I'll do it thens, it only maintains it because it's not fixing the problem. It's not addressing the problem. It's just kicking it down the road. But the rumination and the anxiety and the pressure and the weight from it still remains. So I know I have to do it, and I will. So we're going to get to it. Anybody else out there have that experience where they're like, they know they got to do something, but they're really anxious about it, but they don't really want to do it because they're so anxious about it. But they know that once they do it, the anxiety will be less, but they don't want to do it because it's so anxiety provoking. just me? I hope it's not just me. All right, why don't we get on to these questions? The first audio question is going to come from John, and then it's going to be from Emma. Here we go.
I had an experience with sensorimotor OCD recently. I was very preoccupied with my breath, and I did some exercises to help accommodate this, like setting up random reminders throughout the day and taking a few minutes where I would intently focus on the sensation. One vivid memory I had last week was I was intensely focusing on my breath, inviting the sensation in as I was watching television. At the time, this felt incredible. I noticed how my attention would shift away from the breath, but then I would redirect it back like, oh no, you don't. I want to study you a little bit more. I felt incredibly at ease, better than I had felt in weeks, and I was confident that I had finally found a winning strategy against my OCD. Flash forward, and now things aren't that simple. I still do my regular exercise with random reminders and hard focus on the obsession throughout the day, but I notice the effect is much less satisfying than it was during the previous time I did it. Now it's no longer really about the breath. It's like I'm constantly attempting to reach this ideal state I managed to achieve at one time, and it's becoming frustrating when I can't do it. I'll notice my breath, I'll do my breath focus much in the same way I did the last time, and then once I get back to what I was doing in the first place, I find myself annoyed at the fact that I'm just not feeling as good as I did that first time I did it. I find myself lost at what my first story even is at this point. Maybe it's just that I won't be able to be happy or live a full life or focus what I'm doing until I feel right. My question is, do you think that I'm feeding into the OCD with my continued exposures? What are some alternative ways I can treat this? The alternative seems to be that I should just resign myself to never feeling fully at right or fully at ease, which is really scary to me.
All right, John, thank you for that question. I love that question. I love it. So, all right, let's just jump into it real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, man, you are chasing the feeling. You're chasing a right feeling, this like idealized, like good feeling that you're, quote, like supposed to have from, and then subsequently feeling disappointment that you aren't getting what you expected, right? There's almost this like idea that, all right, you did something, which, by the way, a lot of it was great. The stuff that you did, right, of kind of taking a moment, noticing the feelings, bringing it on, noticing it's there, and then when it started to drift, you were like, nope, bring it on. There's a mindfulness meditation that, if you can find it on the internet, good luck. It's called Stepping into Fear. It's like this 20-minute guided meditation where it talks about like pulling that feeling in more. The intention is to bring on that feeling. And what's beautiful about it is that it notes that as you pull it in more, you eventually get habituation, like the subjective discomfort, like the pain from it starts to subside. And then it goes, well, once it starts to subside, bring it on more, right? And then after you do that, it starts to subside again. And then when it subsided, you bring it on again. And it's this process of trying to bring it on. And it's cool because you realize that you can handle bigger and bigger and higher levels of uncomfortability, discomfort. But that's not always how it's going to go. Sometimes it works, and sometimes you still feel anxious afterwards, right? And it sounds like that's what was happening. It happened that one time, and it's just awesome. It's super cool, but your brain has then turned this into a magic elixir, a algorithm, a procedure. If I do these things, the anxiety will go away, and I'll get this like exposure high. Ooh, the exposure high. And I'll feel great. Cool. All right. And this is how the reinforcement cycle happens. Now, when the anxiety is there, you know what? I know what to do. I just do this. I do the exercise where I'm on my couch, I'm watching the thing, and then I bring on the feeling, and I bring it on. And then I say, no, you don't. You come back over here now. And then it goes away, and I feel great, except it didn't, right? And that's disappointing. Well, I feel like I got the raw end of a deal, right? I was supposed to. I was entitled to. I should have gotten the relief and the high and the confidence from it, but I didn't. It was still there. Well, that can result in being pissed and anxious and upset and disappointed in yourself, or maybe judging yourself, maybe feeling at a loss, maybe feeling even more chaotic than you did before because you didn't get what you expected, right? Okay, all this can happen, right? Now, this also warrants talking about that fantasy and the wishing compulsion, right? The idea of fantasy is, I define it as anything other than the reality, anything other than what's happening anything other that's real, right? So me having my full head of hair back, like longer hair. I have a full head of hair, I suppose, except for these spots, but it doesn't matter. It's like my hair could be longer where I would like it to be, but it's not. It's what it is for right now. It looks like this, right? Now, if I expect it, and anything out, I could expect something that's a small fantasy. Maybe I wake up and my hair is back to the length that I would like it to be. Okay, that's a small fantasy, right? It's not too far out of reality. It is going to be ever so slightly longer tomorrow, but it's not going to grow like an inch and a half to like tonight, right? So so that's a close fantasy. A really far fantasy is that, you know, I'm riding a dragon and, you know, I live in a castle and I won the lottery and, you know, I have, I don't know, my lungs aren't garbage. I don't know, like all this stuff, right? We can have fantasies that are way out there and really close to reality, but they're still fantasy, right? They're still fake. But if we expect our reality to be the fantasy, we're going to be disappointed. And the distance from reality to where that fantasy is that the space in between that is the amount of pain we're going to have if we expect our reality to be our fantasy. All right. So if we have the fantasy that we're supposed to get X and we don't get X, or we have this demand that it's supposed to be a certain way and we didn't get it, there's going to be a certain amount of pain and feeling of loss and mourning or anger or disappointment in yourself or the world around you in the process, right? So the wishing compulsion is somewhat similar. The wishing compulsion is going into your mind, and people experience this kind of like, oh man, I wish that my anxiety would just go away. Oh man, I wish that, I wish that I didn't have to obsess about my blank, or I wish that I didn't have to worry about germs, or I didn't have to, you get the idea. But what that does, it can feel good to engage in a mindset where you don't have it. Oh man, think about how much better my life would be. Think about how much happier I would be. Think about how much freer I would be. Think about all the things that I could do that I can't do now, right? And it's a momentary eradication. It's momentary, like a reprieve from the pain and anxiety and the frustration. But it just comes flowing back because it's still there, right? The wishing didn't solve anything, and it fantasizes about a world in which something isn't true. Except the reality is that you do have the obsession. You do have that worry. I do have these lungs, right? And that's the way that it is. So instead of the wishing, it's how can I make the best life that I can in what my life is, right? So that's a very values-based focus. What can I do? How can I lead my life? What steps can I take today that's going to not try to change reality, but it's going to take reality with me as I go into the life that I want to lead as best I possibly can, right? So there's a difference in the way that we approach it, right? So, John, I also wanted to ask, like, all right, you said like feeling fully at ease. I forget the exact language that you used, but it's like who out there is feeling fully at ease anyways, right? Like said you were disappointed that the anxiety, like that after you did the whole process, you didn't feel at ease. Who promised that you were gonna? I can't think of a time in my life where I've ever felt completely at ease, that I felt completely comfortable and fine about things, right? It's life, things get kind of hard. Things are always annoying. And there are always things that you can complain about. There are always things that you can recognize as being a detractor from full happiness. That's a detractor from being at ease or having full joy or whatever it might be. There's this great saying. It says, the sure way to not feel happy is to question whether or not you're happy. What that does is it then turns you inward. It makes you question, well, all right, do I feel happy? Well, how happy? Do I feel the right amount of happy? Could I feel happier? Should I feel happier? Are there other times that I've felt happier? What would I have to do to get to that place, right? So all of a sudden, then you're recognizing that you're not fully happy. You're on some gradation, some scale of happy, but it's not happy as this binary, right? Because if you're either happy or what? You're sad. So that means if you have any element of not happy, it must mean that you're sad, right? So, all right, I'll go through all of that because to have that mindset that you've got to be happy. You talked about like what that feared story is. Is there the expectation? Is there the dream that you are just going to be at peace at some point and the anxiety is going to be gone, right? And that then the fear is that you're not ever going to be that, or you're never going to be fully present, or you're never going to be free from it, and you're just going to be, you get the idea, right? So that may be part of that to consider, right? Additionally, what are your expectations of treatment? What are your expectations of these tools that you're doing? Is the expectation that I'm going to look for the foolproof method that's going to stop anxiety, or I'm going to find a way to never have anxiety at all? I don't necessarily think that you think that, John, but I think that there's some of us out there who may get into treatment or may have this idea that, this fantasy, that we could get there, that we should be there. Or we hear stories online or videos where people talk about being free of their anxiety and OCD. And we go, well, that should be my expectation too. I have questions for some of those people who say that, and I have some polite doubts that we can talk about it another time. But I think a better way to view treatment and the way to use these things is having a growing ability to choose engagement with a specific thought or a specific experience or a feeling, right? When they arise, or to engage it or to not engage it, but and not to have control, but to build your agency over what you do in response to difficult experiences. And the difficult experiences can absolutely be thoughts, intrusive thoughts, physical sensations, urges, all of this. It's the reality that sometimes our body and our brain are going to experience things that we just don't like. So how do we deal with that in the best possible way? I think the best way is to develop resiliency to disappointment, or resilience to struggle, resilience to anxiety, resilience to stuff that we don't like. And that can come through, like if it's relationships, it's through communicating with the other person, or the other group, the other people in the group, to try to find a workable way to do that, right? It's not easy, but it's important. Maybe if it's with an emotion, maybe it's thinking about some things that can help, right? To help adjust that, to help work with it or minimize the presence of it if it's something that is meaningful or is reasonable to do, right? Like, I don't have to be up in heights all the time, right? I kind of get this fear of heights from time to time. But my job does not require me to engage with heights pretty much ever if I don't want to. Right? It's important to me personally to go do it, so I have to go do that. But you know what? If I don't have to, I don't have to if I don't want to. But should I and shouldn't I? I guess these are different questions, right? But are there things that we can do to deal with these problems in a reasonable and functional way, or maybe not or, but and. And then how do we deal with the remaining anxiety that sometimes, like with my heights and other anxieties, they're still going to show up from time to time, right? So that was perhaps a confusing way to say that, right? Is a better way perhaps for us to deal with our anxiety, not like, oh no, this is the worst and my life is over and this sucks, or is to go, yep, there it is. That feeling is there. And what am I going to do with it? Or perhaps in the exercise that you were talking about, John, that exercise of kind of bringing it on. Well, bring it on. Remind yourself that you have agency. You can engage with it, or you can disengage from it. But it doesn't mean that it's going to stop it, right? It just means that it's going to you're going to pay it more attention or less attention, but it doesn't stop the thing itself, right? It means you're making your day for you and what you want to engage with. And maybe you want to make your whole day about the feeling, the sensation, whatever the sensory motor obsession is, or you want it to be about something else. I'm willing to bet you want it to be about something else, but we can't stop whether or not the obsession is going to be there. I am willing to bet it's going to get worse when you pay attention to it, though. The other thing you can do with that is to also say, wow, you know what? This feeling is there. Boy, and this one's hanging on a lot longer than I expected it to be there. Oh, well, right? It would be nice if it were to go away, but it's not. So, okay, it's there. It's like bad weather, or it's like, it being cold, or it being too hot, or it being rainy. Oh, but there being too much traffic. Like, yeah, this sucks. And me arguing with it, being angry at it, it's certainly not going to change it. Are there things that I can do, things that are within my control to influence it, to influence my focus? And that, again, might be to shift my focus. It might be to have a conversation with that person. It might be to get off the freeway here and then maybe fight traffic on the street, right? But it's like there are things in life that sometimes are going to be out of our control. And how are we going to get unstuck or unhooked from it and instead engage with things more meaningfully? So just a couple of exercises, then I want to get to Emma's question. So 2 things you can try. So one is have the feeling, invite it, bring it in, observe it, and observe and welcome the feelings, right? What feelings or experiences are you resisting in that process? Which ones are you trying to not feel? Which ones are you trying to turn a blind eye or trying to fight against or trying to twist into something else? Which ones are you trying to maybe ignore so that you can focus on something else, right? And then how can you instead drop those defenses and instead welcome it, right? So I've kind of talked about this is an expansion type of exercise. I've talked about it as, what are the feelings that we are struggling to accept, right? And it may be it's a physical sensation. It may be a mental experience, a mental image. It may be an emotion that we have to make space for. It's that illustration of musical chairs. Musical chairs is super exciting and dangerous because there are fewer chairs than there are people. Music stops. There's this frantic struggle to try to get to a seat. You got to go. You got to run. You got to push around. But imagine if there were 50 chairs and 5 people playing. Music stops. Find a chair, put your butt in it, right? Easy. No arguments, no fight. But it's because there was space for everybody. There was ample space for everybody. When we have anxiety, we're not willing to have the anxiety. There's this frantic struggle because we want to have a settled place, and anxiety wants to be there too, but it's saying there's no space for it. So we're fighting against it. It can't be there. I've got to be there. You're there, but you're not. You shouldn't be here. So instead we go, anxiety has a chair. Anger has a chair. Disappointment has its own chair, right? Spite has its own chair. Judgment. You get the idea. It doesn't mean we have to like all these things. It doesn't mean we have to own them and say, this is now who I am. But this is part of who we are. And sometimes we haven't. So maybe there's a chair that you need to create and you need to make bigger space for. And that might be obsession. It might be discomfort. It might be the breath or your heart rate or your tinnitus. There are 2 ways to pronounce it, and I didn't use either one. I combined the 2 in a terrible way. So for 10 minutes, monitor and drift your attention. What do you feel? What do you notice? Observe and accept the things that are there. What did you notice about them not fighting it? Was it weird? Was it hard? Was it fun? Was it relieving? Was it exciting? Right? And what was really hard about that? Okay, another thing you can do. So second exercise. Random moments in the day. Check in with yourself. Do you experience full peace in that moment, or are you kind of bothered by something? Do you feel full peace, or are you noticing that obsession? Do you feel full peace and relaxation, or does your elbow kind of hurt, right? What else do you notice? I'm willing to bet there's going to be something else. The idea behind this is I want you to fight against this narrative that you can and should be able to achieve full peace, because maybe you can't. And maybe that's going to be okay to have that and to acknowledge that and to accept that maybe the fight isn't about full peace, but maybe it's about minimization of the amount of time you spend ruminating on something that you don't want to ruminate on. So I hope this is helpful, John. I want to move on to Emma's question. Emma's question is a message question, a text question. It is text, but she didn't you get the idea. All right, she emailed a bit to me. So here's her question. She says, I keep getting stuck in death or existential obsessions. I follow Greenberg's method of RFERP, so response-focused rumination-focused ERP, as it's the only thing that's ever made sense for me personally. I'm in treatment, but I don't know how to get past this obsession. How do I cope with something that does not have a definitive answer and never will? Oh, Emma, this is a great question. First off, I love how concise it is. You got to the point. Love it. All right, but this is a hard one, right? So, my answer will be different than Dr. Greenberg's examples or methods and approaches. I've talked to him about this. I've had him on the show a couple of times. His approach is really interesting. There's a lot to it that are great. He has a more psychodynamic approach and is a mindset that I cannot wrap my little brain around, and that is okay. But he will have a different approach that perhaps is you should talk about with that therapist. But one thing that from a CBT perspective, I think one of the things to acknowledge here, and this is a little bit of reassurance, but it's also a fact. Fear of death is super freaking common. It's really common. And in our current society, we don't have a good relationship with death. We don't talk about it. It's this taboo that we don't discuss. Yet it happens all the time. It's constantly around us, and it's a reality of life. We will all face it at some point. But there is inherent uncertainty in it. Anxiety loves this stuff. What's going to happen? What's going to happen after it? Is it going to feel good? Is it going to feel bad? Is there life after, or is there not? Right? There's religious and cultural stories that kind of provide some answers for that, right? And they can be kind of good or bad outcomes, or wanted or unwanted, depending on your perspective, but without any objective proof that any of it, other than the faith that comes from having it. And there's faith on both ends. It's faith that there is an afterlife, good or bad. There's faith that there isn't an afterlife, good or bad, because no one's come back to say the answer, right? And yes, I know Christians out there, you're going to say Jesus. I get it. But you get what I'm saying, right? You get what I'm saying. Okay. So it's tough, right? So how do you cope? Well, first off, I think coping is dealing with it, not eliminating it. Coping is dealing with the feeling that's there, dealing with the reality of uncertainty and discomfort, not ensuring that you don't have it, right? I don't have to cope with something I don't have. I have to cope with something that is there. So I have to cope with my anxiety or my discomfort or my uncertainty or whatever it might be about death. And that's where you have to find a place to be in. One thing that I would love for you to be aware of is what are your compulsions around it, right? What feeling are you trying to force, right? What are you trying to figure out about death, or are you trying to find information about it that's going to quell the anxiety, that's going to answer what does or doesn't happen, so you can have a sense of certainty or agency or control over the outcome? Right? Are you ruminating about the topic over and over and over again? Are you trying to talk to friends about it, talk to therapists about it, watch videos about it to understand it, right? Or can you make space for the reality that it is there, right? So one of the things that I would recommend for coping is, one, accepting that maybe this is a topic that you will just be uncomfortable with, okay? There are some things that are just going to be uncomfortable to us, right? The idea of me falling off a cliff and becoming a paraplegic is not a fun thought. And I can think about it and I can do as many exposures as I want. I will still not like the idea. The idea of my kids dying, I won't love that idea. It's just an uncomfortable thought. But I can grow the awareness of when these thoughts, and you can grow the awareness of when those thoughts are going to show up for you, right? And you have to find a way to live your life in that, despite the fact that sometimes they are going to show up, right? You can find there are certainly exposures you can do to various stimuli that bring up the thoughts of death, right? And then how do you ultimately practice expansion with that, right? And the kind of the awareness that this does make me feel uncomfortable, and I'm going to have to tolerate my discomfort around this, right? There a million movies about death. There are going to be a million songs about death, right? But we have to engage with those. What are the things in your life that consistently bring that up? Think about them, make a hierarchy of them. And again, I know this is a very CBT ERP perspective. Make a hierarchy of those situations, progressively start experiencing those and saying, yeah, this just makes me feel uncomfortable. And I don't need to solve it because I can't. And it's not that I don't want you to do something that is hard. I don't want you to do things that are impossible. And that is to fully understand death. We can say there's mystery in it, and the mystery part of it's scary. Yep, it is. And that's where we need to be. So watch the movie Coco, like a lot, right? What Dreams May Come. Watch that a lot. What was I going to say? Oh, there's also, I'll end with this. There is a YouTube series called Deathland. I know, super exciting title, right? And it's a woman's exploration of death and what it means and what perspectives are and what people think about it. I haven't watched all of it, but I've watched a little bit of it. And the people who have watched all of it say that it's great, and they'll watch it for exposures. And again, it's someone who's trying to wrestle with this idea of death and maybe not coming up with an answer for it, and maybe coming to a different relationship with the idea of death. So I would encourage you to consider those things, right? But not to expect that you're not going to have that feeling. But to Dr. Greenberg's point, we can have agency. I guess we can control. I guess we have control over where we put our attention, but we can't control whether or not we do or don't feel anxious about the idea of death. But instead, embrace it as a reality. Embrace it as one of those things that makes you feel uncomfortable, and that's okay. But is it going to feel uncomfortable, or is it going to drive your life and drive what you do and how you do it? And that would be some of the difference. So, Emma and John, thank you so much for all of these questions. I will try to keep these short because the last episode was way too long. I know that. So, again, I hope everybody out there is doing well. And I'll say at the end, everybody, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Fearcast. If you would like your question answered on a future episode, please click on the Submit a Question link at fearcastpodcast.com. If you would like your question answered sooner, please send me a recording of your question to questions@fearcastpodcast.com, or by sending me an audio message through Instagram by DMing me at fearcastpodcast on Instagram. If you like the Fearcast, please write a review on your podcast platform of choice. Please remember that the Fearcast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, please go over to fearcastpodcast.com and click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye.